Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about Elizabeth Holmes' trial for the Theranos Company and what all of that means. I'll have more on that in just a moment. Okay, to start out with, don't be surprised if the jury fails to convict on one or more of the charges. Now, I know what you're thinking. These people ran a giant Ponzi scheme, and how in the world could the law let them get away with it? Well, there are a lot of things in the law that make sense and a lot of things that don't make sense, and the job of the defense attorney is to confuse the heck out of the jury. And that may indeed be what happens in this particular case, or it may be that the government simply doesn't make its case very well. But here are some reasons why I think there might be a little bit of a surprise in the verdict in the Theranos case. So about, probably 10 years ago, I found out about this company called Theranos it had this wonderful machine that would do everything from diagnose syphilis to figure out that you have tennis elbow on the basis of a couple of drops of blood. And one of the things that I do, because I know how the world works, is that if anything sounds too good to be true, I know it probably is. And of course, I had a background in healthcare. I worked for 13 years as a registered respiratory therapist. I know how much blood it takes to determine what the saline content of blood is. I know how much blood it takes to determine how much potassium is in blood. You have to have enough to measure on a measuring device. And you're not going to be able to do that with one or two drops of blood. Now, it does work with glucose. One or two little drops of blood will give you all the glucose information you need because glucose is so prevalent in our blood. But to be able to do all of these additional tests that Theranos promised, that just did not seem like something that could be real. So let's talk for a moment about what the elements are of mail fraud and wire fraud. And of course, the difference is that in mail fraud, somebody uses the mail to perpetrate a fraud. And in wire fraud, somebody uses telecommunications, either fax, phone, computers, internet, any of those things. That's the difference between wire and mail fraud. That's it. The rest of it is pretty much the same. And here are the elements. Having devised or intended to devise a scheme to defraud or to perform specified fraudulent acts, and 2, the use of the mail for the purpose of executing or attempting to execute the scheme or the specified fraudulent acts. And I find it interesting that the name of the defendant there is Schmuck versus the United States. I find that just tremendously funny. The elements of the offense of mail fraud under the statute are a scheme to defraud, the mailing of the letter, and the purpose for executing the scheme. So essentially, you have to have a scheme to defraud somebody of money or property, and you have to have the specific intent to take that money or property. And that doesn't sound like a great hurdle to get over, but it can be. And the reason is because many times people who develop new technologies and are working to make them work often do this thing called puffing. Puffing is a legal term. And basically what it says is, you make comments like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Well, that's a statement of opinion. It's not a statement of fact, because some people don't even like sliced bread. They would much rather pull it off the loaf in hunks. Here's the deal. If I can characterize a statement as a matter of opinion as opposed to a matter of fact, then it is less likely I'm going to get a fraud conviction. So if I say that my machine gives reliable results and I have some evidence that it produces reliable results, even if there is other evidence that it doesn't produce reliable results, then I can have an honest belief that my statements are true. They may not be true, but I can still have an honest belief. And therefore, because I have an honest belief, I do not have the specific intent to defraud. I may very well have the specific intent to get money to fund my company and make my machines work better, but I don't necessarily have the specific intent to commit that crime. Now, the Theranos trial was a fairly long and drawn-out trial, and the jury continues to deliberate as I'm doing this. I have no idea what the result in that case will be. Elizabeth Holmes is a very attractive blonde woman who makes a very good appearance, and I strongly suspect that has an effect on the jury, particularly if there are men on the jury. I'm not trying to be sexist here, nor am I saying that men are going to give a pretty blonde woman a pass. But sometimes men are going to give a pretty blonde woman a pass. That's just the way it is. And if there is any room, any wiggle room in there, it's probably going to fall on the side of the defendant because she certainly appears to merit some consideration in that regard. She has a very interesting history. She dropped out of college. She was working on a chemical engineering degree. She dropped out of college, formed this company, started putting these machines together. She worked on in this company for a long time, developing it and getting it ready to go public. And she did take a lot of people's money for a product that absolutely didn't work, or at least it didn't work the way they said it worked. And as a result, that's what got her in trouble, and that's certainly what is going to lead to her, giving up all of her income, all of the money that she's ever had. She's going to wind up going through bankruptcy to clear her debts, and I'm sure they've put the Theranos company into bankruptcy for whatever value it might have. It's probably not going to be very much. The long and short of this is that it is quite possible, with good defenders and good attorneys defending this case, to defeat one or more elements of the mail fraud and wire fraud conviction. And if they can do that, then she's going to walk on those counts. Now, will she get convicted on some counts? That I have no idea. But you have to remember that when jurors go through this, and it's very clear they're going through this count by count, item by item, fraudulent statement by fraudulent statement, or perhaps I should say alleged fraudulent statement versus alleged fraudulent statement. They're going through that very, very carefully, and generally speaking, that means they're doing a good job, and they're not just saying, wow, sure sounds like she flung a lot of stuff up against the wall and hoped it was going to stick. Let's convict this woman and go have lunch. Sometimes juries do that. This jury does not seem to be doing that, and that's a good sign for Elizabeth Holmes. Now, at the end of the day, I have no idea how this case is going to work out. I just have a feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, I have a feeling that there are going to be some acquittals in this case, if not a blanket acquittal. It seems to be, 2021 seems to be the year of acquittals, with the possible exception of Kim Potter. And while I have criticized prosecutors for bringing cases that were close to the line, I will say that I think the prosecutors did a good job here in bringing this case to trial. Whether they win or whether they lose, they're standing up for the investors who lost money, and I think that's good. There needs to be some accountability. And even if it means she gets a free bill and walks out of that courtroom not in handcuffs, that's okay, because at the very least, they did what they could to get some accountability in this case. So again, no criticisms of the prosecutors in this case. I'll talk a little more about the Ghislaine Maxwell case in another video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments down below. And as always, if you haven't already, please go over here and subscribe to our channel and tap on the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I release a video on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. Have a marvelous day, and I'll catch you on here next time.